What's up guys, Sagi here and welcome to another Tech Gear Talk. Today I'm going to show you what I did to turn my M50 into a video beast. Obviously the M50 is an entry-level APS-C mirrorless camera, but it's actually quite capable. And even though I like using it as is, I've actually put together a complete video rig that has worked really well for me. So let's go step by step through each component and then I'll tell you why I chose to use it, and I'll also include some additional options in the description. All right, so at the heart of this system is the cage, and I chose the small rig cage as my base. It's a dedicated cage designed for the M50 and it provides a very tight fit. It also adds a little bit of size to the camera. The M50 is on the smaller side, and there are times, especially when I'm using larger lenses, where I feel like a deeper grip would be more comfortable. So I pretty much just leave the cage on even when I'm just taking photos. And by the way, I'll have links in the description to every item that I talk about in this video so you can easily find it. I love that this cage has 1/4-20 and 3/8 holes all the way around, which gives me tons of options as far as mounting accessories. There's a built-in 1/4-20 screw at the bottom that will attach the cage to the M50, and I like that it doesn't come out so that I don't lose it. There's also a cold shoe mount on the top left, and I'll get to that in a minute. It was also really important to me that the cage won't block any of the functionality of the camera. So you can see that I can still access the buttons, dials, and ports, and the battery compartment, so I can access either the battery or the memory card slot. And I still have complete range of motion with the fully articulating touchscreen. I also like the fact that it protects the camera whenever I put it down if I happen to hit it against something, which of course never happens to me. But for example, if I want to put the camera on the ground to get a shot with a reflection in a puddle or something like that, and the ground might be a little wet, I know that I can get the camera right on the ground and I don't have to worry about damaging the body. Now, the last thing this cage does for me is allow me to easily use the M50 on a gimbal without having to worry about the lens being too tall. So for example, if you've seen my Sigma EFM Trio video, you know that I love using the Sigma 16mm f1.4 DCDN because I love how wide it is. And when I use it on the gimbal, because the body of the M50 is so small, I run into a problem where the lens actually extends below the bottom of the M50 and it hits the mounting plate. So with this cage on, the camera is raised just enough so that where I can easily use this lens and balance the rig. Next, I wanted to improve the handling and stability, so I added a side handle. And this is a small rig wooden universal side handle. It could be mounted as a right or left-handed handle, but the M50 has a fully articulating touchscreen which extends to the left, so I attached mine to the right side of the cage. This handle is really nicely made and it's super comfortable to hold. Now this handle also has a cold shoe mount and a few extra 1/4-20s and a 3/8 mount at the top. And it attaches to the cage using these 2 thumb screws, and you can get them pretty tight by hand, but to really lock them into place, you can use a hex screw. And check out this super clever design here by Small Rig. They built the spot for the Allen wrench right into the handle. It's also magnetized, so there's no way for it to just pop out of place. And what I noticed was that as soon as I started handling the camera with this side handle, I immediately got more stable footage and smoother camera movement. Next, I wanted to add a top handle, which ends up doing a couple of things for me. I wanted to be able to just quickly grab this camera right off of a tripod or just carry the rig around. And this small rig top handle is just what I was looking for. Again, there's an additional cold shoe mount at the top, and there's tons of 1/4-20 and 3/8 threaded holes, and you can see that I'm definitely taking advantage of that in terms of mounting options. The top handle is also a great way to get those super low angle shots that I sometimes use for B-roll. Before I move to the next section, if you like what you've seen so far, let me know by giving this video a thumbs up. It really helps me know what kind of content you guys like so that I can make more of it. And if this is your first time here, go ahead and hit the subscribe and notification buttons so you can stay up to date on all the latest gear and tutorials. All right, so moving on, the next thing I wanted to address is audio. And if you've watched any of my audio related videos, you know that whenever possible, I try to avoid using the built-in microphone on the camera. And there are several issues with any built-in microphone on a camera. First of all, they're always so tiny and they can only do so much. Next, high-end audio components are just not a main focus of camera manufacturers. They spend money on things like better image quality, better ISO performance, and improved dynamic range. Finally, and probably one of the biggest issues why the built-in microphone is it's not that great is that the microphone has to be as far away from the subject as the camera is. And it doesn't have a pickup pattern that's designed to do what most of us need, which is focus on the subject. And with the M50 in this particular setup, there are a few different microphones that I use depending on the situation. If I'm running and gunning and I want a portable solution where I'm always ready to go, then one of my favorite microphones is the Deity V-Mic D3 Pro. It's super compact for the quality of the audio that you get, and it comes with a built-in Rycote Lyre shock mount, which isolates the microphone from camera movement and prevents camera handling noise from traveling up to the mic. This is a shotgun mic with a super cardioid pickup pattern, meaning that it's going to focus on sounds coming from the front of the camera and it's going to reject sounds coming from the side and the back. So all I do is attach it to the cold shoe mount on the top left of the cage and I'm all set. And I use this mic a lot because it's got great features like low pass filters and an incredibly important plus 20 dB stepless adjustment gain knob. This lets me turn the gain down on the M50 like I showed you in my setup tutorial, and then I can make an adjustment on the microphone where I get the exact levels that I want. And what I'm doing there is letting the microphone amplify the sound instead of counting on the M50's not so great preamps. Now, if I have a subject that's moving around a lot or I can't get close enough to get good audio because of how the shot is framed, then my go-to is the Rode Wireless Go. And this is my favorite wireless setup right now because it's so small and light, so I can always bring it with me. It has two components, a transmitter, which will be clipped onto the subject, and then a receiver, which will be attached to the cage and then wired into the 3.5mm mic input jack. What's great about this small kit is that you don't need a lavalier mic because the transmitter has a microphone built in. Now, if I don't want the transmitter to show up in my video, then I can actually plug a lavalier microphone and then the transmitter can be hidden and I'm good to go. What's great about this setup is that even if the subject is moving or turning to the side, the microphone is essentially moving with them and I'm getting crisp and consistent audio. All right, now that I have audio taken care of, I want to make things a little bit easier for myself visually. Now, the M50 has a fully articulating screen, so I can always have it pointed at me whether I'm behind the camera, in front, above, to the side, or even below. But sometimes it's just nicer to see things on a larger screen, so I add an external monitor. Right now, I'm using the Andy Cine A6 Plus, which I attach to the cold shoe mount at the top of the handle, using this awesome tilt arm. This way I can still point the monitor in any direction that I want, but I have a much larger screen and I also have some added functionality. Now, there are a lot of things that I like about this monitor. It has a touchscreen, it has pinch to zoom, easy to use operating system, and I can use both Sony NPF and Canon LPE6 batteries to power it. Now, I can even upload LUTs so that if I want to shoot in a flat color profile like CineStyle or ProLost, but I want to see what it's actually going to look like after I apply the LUT, I can just do that in the monitor. So if you watched my cinematic look tutorial for the M50, I talk about shooting in a flat color profile so you get more details in the shadows and the highlights. The issue is that it doesn't look that great on the back of the camera because it's really washed out. So being able to apply a LUT in the monitor solves that issue because it's not actually changing the file you're recording, but it's showing you the flat file with the correction LUT applied. There are also a ton of video assist features, and probably the most important ones to me are the waveforms and the false color graphs, which really help me get a proper exposure. The M50 has a histogram, which is great, but the waveforms and the false color are just the next level in terms of accuracy, and they're super easy to use, and again, a very powerful feature that this monitor adds. For $230, I think it's an excellent value. You get everything that I showed you, plus there's a ton more that I'm not even going into because this is an M50 video. Next, I'm going to tell you about some of my favorite lenses. The one that I use most often, not just with the M50, but with any camera that accepts it, is the Sigma Art 18-35 f1.8. You're probably already familiar with this lens. I just love the image and build quality. It's a super fast lens. It opens to f1.8, which also makes it a great low light lens. Now, because it's designed for a DSLR APS-C sensor and the M50 is an EFM mount, I use my EFS to EFM adapter from Canon and it works great. Now, when I want a smaller setup, I've also been using the three new Sigma EFM lenses, the 16, 30, and 56 f1.4 DCDN. These are absolutely fantastic lenses, and I have a dedicated video review of all three, which I'll link to up in the corner and in the description. If I want to take the next step and use some of my L series Canon glass, then I have two options. I can either use the same adapter that I showed you with the Sigma 18-35, or I can use a speed booster like this one from Comlight. And then I'm getting a wider angle of view and an additional stop of light. So obviously this is a super powerful option. So for example, here I'm using it with my Zeiss 50mm f2, and I absolutely love the look that I get from this combination. All right, moving on from the lenses, let's talk about lighting. When I'm shooting in low light, or even if I just want to separate my subject from the background and I don't have my studio lights with me, I use the Godox R1. For portability and versatility, this is my go-to light right now. It's super bright at full power and it's dimmable from 0 to 100% using the dial on the side. There's an LCD screen on the top so I can see the battery power, intensity, and color temperature. In CCT mode, I can select a color temperature between 2500 and 8500 Kelvin, depending on whether I need a warmer or cooler light. I can also switch to HSB mode, which lets me select between 360 different colors and then different levels of saturation and brightness for each. This is great when I want to add a splash of color, and it's one of the reasons that I use these lights when I shoot some of my B-roll. I have 3 of these and they charge using a USB-C cable. The battery lasts a really long time, and if I ever need to, I can charge them on the fly. With this setup, I add one on the right using this Vigim adapter, and this light helps brighten up my subject and gives me that extra pop and separation from the background, or again, even just some fill light. And the reason why I use this adapter is because it lets me do a couple of things. First of all, I can point the light up and down whichever way that I want. And then it also lets me change the direction of the light. So I can always have it pointed right at my subject. There's also a magnetic diffuser that I just snap on, and it actually does a really good job at diffusing the light and making it much softer and more flattering. Moving on, I want to talk a little about the SD cards that I use with my M50. I've been using SanDisk Extreme Pro 128GB cards for a long time now with all of my cameras, and they've worked great for me. I have some that are a little older, and now there are newer and faster models from SanDisk, which you can get for less than I paid for mine. So I'll link to them in the description. But even at the older speeds, I've never had any issues with those cards. Now, I'm always gonna recommend that you get more memory cards than you think you need because it's so important to have backup. Also, I recommend keeping extra, even smaller capacity cards in your bag so that you never get somewhere and realize that you forgot to put a card in your camera or your card is full and you're always good to go. It's a fairly small investment in the long run, and even if it only saves you once ever, it's totally worth it. Now, speaking of backup, let's talk about extra batteries. Now, the M50 is known for having less than optimal battery life, and I already have a video that shows you how I solved this issue. But now I have an even better solution. So one of my old solutions was to use additional batteries, and I'll link to a few third-party options which I use and have worked great for me and saved me a lot of money. I also have a tutorial where I show you how to use a coupler with either a power bank or to plug it into a wall outlet. But then I found out about Power Junkie and I was hooked. So basically this is a little adapter that lets you use Sony NP-F batteries to power other gear. I can use one of these batteries. I got 2 of them for $37, and each one of them has more than 5.5 times the battery life of an M50 battery. So I use the USB coupler from the battery life video, plug it into the Power Junkie, grab one of these batteries, and I'm set for a good amount of time. Okay, so that's how I rig up my M50 for video, and this setup has been working super well for me. I'd love to know how you set yours up, and I'm always happy to learn and get new ideas from you guys. If you haven't yet, make sure that you check out my cinematic tutorial for the M50. In part 1, I covered the best video settings and then go through all the setups that you should do in camera before you even start shooting. Then in part 2, I take you step by step through what you need to do while you're shooting to get the best results. And if you're interested in some great lens options, take a look at the Sigma EFM Trio. I'll put links in the description to all the products that I talked about in this video, as well as some of my favorite lenses, because There are always specials and discounts, and those links will automatically be updated with the lowest pricing. I really hope that I was able to give you some good ideas about how you can set up your M50 for video. If I did, please let me know by giving this video a thumbs up, tweet it, share it, and if you haven't yet, join the community by hitting the subscribe and notification buttons. You can always find me on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook at Tech Gear Talk. You know what I always say, buy it nice or buy it twice. Good luck and see you soon.